Right, tools for adventure motorcycling. This here is a tool bag which I took on the Trans-America Trail. It looks a bit of a shitty bag. It's a tool roll that I made out of some packaging material that came with one of my crash bars. So, first thing is sockets. This is a really nice socket set that I got when I lived in England, and a lot of people say that a lot of people take shitty tools with them, but I took this nice socket ratchet, because if you break one of these when you really need it in the middle of nowhere, then that's going to be really bad. The sockets I took are only the ones that fit specifically on specific bolts on my bike. I can take most of my bike to bits with this, and they're held together with these really handy removable zip ties. A nice way of doing this is, kind of a nice way because it does get annoying, is to nest them so that they all fit together. So that's sockets. Along with that is the extension to get behind my crash bars, and this thing which is part of the kind of puncture system, but that fits inside this. You can also get that off the wrench. And speaking of punctures, these are Motion Pro bead breakers, the aluminium ones, which make them super light. They are tie levers, of course. You can see the tie lever part here. You've probably seen these if you're watching this video. You stick it under the bead, that fork, stick that in there, and then pop the bead. Not incredibly important with tube bikes. I mean, my bead's very easy to break because my bike's not tubeless. I have to admit that after swapping my tyres for the first time using shop tools on this trip, I bought this because this is a third steel tie lever, which luckily I didn't have a puncture, and if I did, I'm sure I would have been able to do it with these three tie levers. But I have to admit that I was a bit arrogant about the whole puncture situation. Having worked in bicycle shops since I was 15, I've taken thousands of tyres off bicycles, but motorbikes are a completely different ballgame. And having a larger tie lever, even a freaking huge one, despite what people say, getting tyres off motorbikes is not easy. To get the wheels off, you could take a massive socket like this, or this is a Cruise Tools wrench, which this one, they do them in various sizes, but this one is 22 and 27, which is the right size for the Africa Twin. So the front one, you stick this 17 Motion Pro thing into one end of the axle, and then undo that end like that with that thing. Very useful. Make sure that before you leave, take your wheel axles off using this tool and put them back on again, because if you use some great big breaker bar to do your wheel nuts up, you'll never get them off with this thing. So that's that. These are open-end wrenches, which spanners, a 10 and a 12 for the Africa Twin to undo the chain adjusters. You know, one's a locking nut, and then the other one's a adjusting nut. So those I took with me. And whilst I was in Denver, actually, I picked this up at a sale. They're not particularly great quality spanners, but it's nice to have a whole set, because there are often places where you can't get a socket in. So that's those spanners. Allen keys. This is a fold-out set, metric for my bike. Long ones too, so you can get them into spaces. Like getting the toolbox off is kind of awkward if you have a little tiny tool like one of these bicycle ones, for instance. Not very useful. So have a big one like that. Duct tape, don't go anywhere without it. Squash it down, take the middle out. Very useful tool. Then we've got a couple of bags. This one has kind of electrical stuff in it. You know what spanners look like. Put this stuff here. Electrical, a couple of bits of wire in case there were shorts or I needed to test things with ends on them. Heat shrink, you can always use your exhaust to heat shrink that. And then these are spare Honda fairing clips, which are super cool because you can lock them just by pressing that. And then if you press the middle in, it unlocks the whole thing again. So they're resettable, which is very cool of Honda. This bag says puncture on it. Not just punch stuff, but JB Weld. It's sticky, I think I'll put that back in there. It's probably got a little bit of a hole in it. Patch cement and a selection of patches here, different sizes. Some valve stem nuts and valve caps which have valve core removal tools in them. Very useful. That is thread lock. Always thread lock all the bits of your bike because, you know, off-road bike you can shake loose. I had a big bag of these zip ties, zipping spare tubes to bits of fairing and bits of fairing to themselves if you crash, etc, etc. One thing I was going to say is that take the tools that you are prepared to use in a particular situation. You don't need to take like electronic diagnosis kits if you can't fix whichever electronic doodad there is, because you'll just be out in the middle of the desert going, oh, that's broken. Can't do anything about it. This is a tool which I made out of a McDonald's cup. You can see it was a cup. To clean fork seals. It's a very, very thin piece of plastic which I smoothed and trimmed, shove it up into the fork seal, take the dust seal out first, and then very carefully drag it round, trying to get the bits of cack that are leaking in fork seals. I had to use that, and then Honda replaced my fork seals when I got back to Canada. And a bit of sandpaper I used this particularly to deglaze my brakes because there was an unfortunate incident involving a workshop that got oil all over my bike, which wasn't very handy. Last thing, if there's any very specific spares that your bike needs, then take them with you. My bike, being a DCT, needs this, which is a DCT filter. I luckily got this from the Saint, the TAT Saint, who discovered that this is actually used in Honda ATVs as well.